Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stoked, the ultimate Star Trek Online podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Hey there, J-Man.
Hi.
Should we say welcome back?
We should.
We
Welcome
missed everyone.
back.
Welcome back to Stoked.
We had so many emails
Yeah.
and people just yelling at us for, I
Tweets,
can't believe you took a
forum
week
posts.
off.
Messenger pigeon.
I guess we never get to do that again.
No, I know.
Never,
well,
ever.
we're making it up because this week we're coming back with a great interview with Daniel Stahl, the executive producer of Star Trek Online. In the interview, some nice, juicy UGC content information, which is now got a new name called the Foundry, and all the details about that in the interview with Daniel.
Coming up here shortly.
Also, get some information on the Devidians.
Also, he started mentioning the Tholians, which are coming in the season after the Devidians.
And what we might get to see, what some of the Tholians' abilities might be. So that's cool. I think it was 2 episodes ago, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, we asked all of you to send in some of your interview questions for somebody at Cryptic, and we've got some of those, so those will be included in this interview. I mean, also there was some great news for Klingons in
Tons, yeah, great Klingon stuff in there.
Okay. But I know I've just teased the heck out of that interview, but before we get into that, there's a couple of things that we could cover up front.
Yeah, there's some new trophies out that you can buy.
Yep.
With your, they're finally another use, at least for Gold Press Latinum.
And you do have to buy them.
You have to spend your Gold Press Latinum to get Gold Press Latinum trophies.
Yeah. Now, these are actually, I don't know, though.
It's kind of cute.
It is cute, and if you if you're one of the, like a Ferengi who lusts after Gold Press Latinum, these are like a shrine to your love.
I love the ultimate one though. That keep going just a little bit more because
Stacks?
there is a stack.
Yes, that's
them.
my favorite too.
That's what I'm buying. I gotta get it.
Yeah, I want that on my ship.
Yep.
You're gonna hang out in your lounge, right? You'd see that there.
There's my money.
You know, there was also. Well, I guess I kind of want to save this for next week. And I've never been a big fan of the Akira. I kind of felt like Akira is sort of the weaker of the designs, and then it was like a little extra salt in the wound because it felt like Enterprise was based off the Akira design.
It was an upside-down Akira, basically.
And it's like, what? Come on. Come on. I was wanting something based off the Connie, so I think I hold that against the Akira.
Oh, what a jerk you are.
I know, right?
No, I actually kind of like the Akira,
You
so
do.
I'm excited. But I know that this current shots, I got some, I put them in the show notes for this, but we're not going to cover it because these are still a work in progress.
And yeah, and I think we should probably, it's kind of fun to watch where this is going as it's going. You know, because I do, you know, I'm a ship geek.
Right.
I love looking at these ships in progress, but I want to save my judgment.
So probably get to that next week.
I don't want to be judgy, J-Man.
Don't be judgy.
Well, I mean, I'm going to be judgy, but I'll be judgy next week.
Next week, we'll be judgy all over the Akira.
Yeah.
Also, next week is going to be the epic math segment that Chris teased last week. It's actually it's getting a little out of hand.
Yeah.
And I need some more time to do a few more tests.
There's
and,
no
refinements.
way it was going to fit in this episode with the Daniel Stahl interview.
Absolutely not.
Just not going to happen.
So hopefully it'll be even better next week.
I agree. I think so. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, let's roll the interview with Daniel Stahl. And welcome to the interview segment. We're excited today. On the line, we have Star Trek Online's executive producer,
David Stahl.
Daniel Stahl.
I'm here.
Welcome to
Stahlzilla in the house.
Welcome to the show, Daniel. Now, we've got a bunch of questions lined up for you, so why don't we jump right into it. The first one's going to be something in regards to weekly episodes, and I'll throw it to the J-Man.
All right. The first question I got for you is, how much of lead time does the content team currently have on these weekly episode missions that we're seeing?
So that's a really good question. We have different lead times for different series. For example, I'm reviewing the scripts right now for Series 3, and so myself and the leads have been reading over the script that Christine Kestrel wrote. And we're checking those out. I don't want to spoil too much about that, but so we're reviewing those storylines, and all of the scripts have been written for what those episodes are going to be.
All the way through Series 3. Now, just to clarify, the Devidian series coming up is going to be Series 2. Right, okay.
So, for example, the episodes that are going out for the Devidian series, which starts next Saturday, the 16th, I believe, those, we have 2 episodes that are already in the can and we consider done. We just play test those. We give them out to the internal company. We give them sort of the code to get in and play those episodes on our internal test server. If they find anything that they have some feedback, we'll still incorporate that in what we would call an incremental to those episodes. But we consider those done. And then the last of those Devidian series, the ones that are going to be airing towards the end of beginning of November, those are are still sort of wrapping up their final play tests and getting ready to be done.
Wow, we're almost in November already.
It's true.
So yeah, it goes fast. So in terms of lead time, you know, we have different types of lead times for the process. So for example, you know, I showed some concept art for the Tholians. I would certainly love to see the Tholians as a series antagonist, but in order to do something like the Tholians, it requires a lot of lead time. So we have to not only do some concept work, because Tholians haven't really been represented. They're a different type of animation rig for us, because most of the enemies in Star Trek Online are bipedal. So having something that has more than 2 legs requires some animation support from our core team.
Interesting.
And so and then on top of that, you know, we would want to have some unique ships for them that aren't in the game yet, as well as maybe some of the special web effects. So with that, that's going to require a lot more lead time. And so in order for us to even think about doing Tholians, we have to get the ball rolling, you know, early. So that's why you're seeing some concept work, and you're seeing us sort of work on that. So I honestly can't say exactly when the Tholians will hit the episode circuit, but just the fact that we've started working on them, you can tell that we're moving in that direction.
Now, is the lead time and preserving it, is that some of the reason that we've seen some gap between Series 1 and Series 2, or is that something that's been sort of planned all along, or what?
Part of it is, you know, with the featured episodes, we wanted to have them come out on a weekly basis, so that there was no real, you know, there was again, replicating that sort of TV series looking forward to next week feeling. So when we've made the Breen episodes, we were originally thinking of launching just all those episodes at once with season 2, or sometime during season 2. But then this idea of, well, let's do it as an actual serial, and let's break it up into different episodes. And that's where the idea came from. And so with that already in the works, we started looking at the Devidians series and well, let's do another series after that. And then we just got in love with the idea, and so we started planning more and more. So the lead time is us really trying to run with the idea that sort of came mid-sprint and say, okay, well, let's get these on a regular basis. And part of it is learning on our part. You know, some of the episodes, we're just trying different things. We're trying new types of missions, just a different mix and flow. Obviously, some types of missions take us longer to build than others, just in terms of the amount of people that have to be involved. The time's really about the same. It's really the manpower. You know, some episodes require more visual effects, some require more audio. And so having those other resources be involved does require a little bit of effort. And so having the lead time in between served two purposes. One is we wanted there to be some time for people to get this exclusive reward, which was the Breen Bridge Officer. Because initially when we said, oh, as soon as the episode's out, you know, you'll be able to get it for that week and then it'll be gone. But then we had some pushback that's, you know, well, what if someone's on vacation, or what if someone hasn't logged in for a couple weeks? And so we're like, okay, well, let's extend that a little bit. And it just sort of fit nicely with the fact that we wanted to have more time. And what we're finding is that having more time is better. I think the Devidian series is going to be pretty cool in terms of what we're doing. We haven't done a whole lot of interiors lately in Star Trek Online that I've been personally happy with. But when I play through these episodes that are going to be taking place on Drazana Station, I think it's really fun stuff. And I think it's a step in the right direction. And so having that extra time to sort of polish the interiors, make them look different, add some new visual effects that you're going to see, I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, it does.
Now, in regards to the Devidians, are we going to see the revamped version of those show up in the Ghost ship?
Yeah, so the Devidian, we call them critters, but the Devidian group itself has been overhauled. So there's not two versions of those in the game anymore. You'll be seeing the same Devidians in the episode that takes place in the Cardassian. I guess it's Cardassian space. That's the one with the wormhole. It's where the Hirogen are setting a trap, and you go on to the Ghost ship. Right. So for that episode, you'll be seeing some visual effect changes, as well as the critter group themselves changing. So the visual effects is that sort of blue screen. You'll notice it's the trialic energy that was seen in Time's Arrow in the Next Generation. Right. We've gone back and we've had some time to rework those effects to make them a little bit visually more appealing on different, especially on different video cards. We had some complaints that with certain video cards those effects didn't look very good. So we've gone back and we've done some compatibility work on it to make it look better and just to make it look cooler. So you're going to see some of that, and that's sort of, you know, you'll start noticing it more and more as the series goes on. It's kind of our tell for, hey, you know, maybe something's going on here.
That's exciting. Now, do you want to shift gears to the Klingons?
Yeah, actually, that lends itself nicely because I've heard the Devidians will be taking place in the Klingon neutral zone. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the Driffin's Comet is coming close by to Drazana Station. So you're actually going to see one of the nice things that's coming out of this is Drazana Station is getting a redesign. So we're not going to try. I'm not going to try and come up with some pithy explanation for why the station's going to look different on the outside, other than the fact that now it just looks better. So
upgrade.
So it got magically upgraded. So just have to pretend that it's always been this cool from the very beginning of the game. So yes, the series takes place in the neutral zone, partly because we want to show that we can do these episodes in existing sectors. We don't have to make a new sector just to make a new episode.
That's a good point.
So we can add these pretty much anywhere we want. And the nice thing about putting it in the neutral zone is Klingons don't have to travel halfway across the galaxy just to play some content.
Yeah.
You know, as part of that, we're going to be opening up some of the sectors around Klingon space as well for Klingons starting in Season 3, and Gozer's working on that right now.
We've also heard some other tips, hints of KDF content coming, including possibly incorporating crafting onto their side of the fence. Do you have any info on that? Yeah,
so this all came about because we're adding new Memory Alpha craftable items. And so one of the things, you know, we did this sort of tweak to Memory Alpha early on in the game, but it was really just a basic functionality and usability pass to make the crafting of items be more clear on how it worked. But we haven't really added any new items as much as I had hoped we would. So in Season 3, we're actually getting some time to go back, and we're adding an item set that is at the top tier of each one of the research trees that allows you to craft some specific items. And we're also trying to get in some high-end consumables into there as well. But part of that issue is if we add these really cool items to Memory Alpha, then how do Klingons get access to them? And so that's where the whole idea is, where we're going to add some crafting stations to Kronos. And then the question comes up, well, then how do they get their anomalies?
Right.
And so Scott, Gozer, and I sat down and we brainstormed a little bit and talked about it. And we said, well, we don't necessarily want to go back and turn on, you know, scanning anomalies and all of the Klingon content. We thought it would be much more fun if Klingons simply raid for that those same items. So, for example,
awesome.
You'll see a research vessel or maybe a base, and instead of just going and scanning it, you might even get the scan minigame, but it'll be under the context of you sort of stealing it, or just taking it for the Empire. So
that's a great idea. I like that.
So you know, in order to give us some place to do that, that's why we're opening up some of the sectors around Kronos, the sector right above where the Klingons are.
Pycanis, right?
Yeah. So that sector will be opened up, and then I think as we get closer to Series 3, we're going to be opening up some additional sectors.
Nice.
With the ideas that the Klingons will be able to travel directly, you know, through sectors. They won't have to make these big, long, you know, hyper jumps just to get to the other side of the galaxy.
Any confirmations either way on Targ breeding? Come on, everybody wants Targ breeding.
You know, Al loves the idea of Targ breeding, and you know, we even saw the thread about the glommers. Yeah. But the idea is that Al's been talking about this for a long time. You know, because Al, our systems lead designer, created the Tribble game, and we really we recognize that fans enjoy the Tribble breeding game. It's a really kind of a fun thing that he made, and we want to make that, you know, work for the Klingon faction, but you know, them breeding Tribbles doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, it doesn't.
So I think his idea is he wants to feed Tribbles to Targs and then have the Targs sort of act as the breeding game.
And is the idea there then to be give Klingons an option to get those same buffs, basically?
That is the idea, yeah. So I don't know exactly. I haven't got when he tells me this. I haven't asked him some of the interesting questions like, well, okay, so if you feed a Tribble to a Targ, what do you get? Does it
What is it that you pick up? Maybe, maybe bag.
How does this work out? So I don't think we've got that far, but it's definitely something we want to do.
Now, I want to ask you, this is my big pet question, and we've got a new name for it, user-generated content, and we're calling it the Foundry now, right?
Yeah, the
Foundry,
tools,
is that what it is, or was it the Foundation? I forget.
Foundry.
No, it's the Foundry. So I'm going to just call it that because that's what we're referring to it internally. The tool set itself is being labeled that, the Foundry.
Just a quick sidebar. This is basically an evolution of what was once called Genesis system, right?
Correct. So the early tool was called Genesis, and that was an internal tool that we used, and I used myself, to quickly generate locations that we could put missions in. Because one of the big crunches in developing so much content is, if you need an artist to manually hand place all of that stuff, it can take a long time. It can take up to a week or two to make a really good looking map. Mm-hmm. So having this tool allowed us to make a lot of maps quickly. And the nice thing about having those tools is that it opened up the ability for people who hadn't really used these sort of high-powered tools before to make mission content. And so that's where you're able to see people like myself who haven't really taken any environment art classes were able to make some pretty cool patrol missions. And so from there we decided, well, let's consider opening these tools up for other people to use internally. And then from there it just seemed like a natural evolution. So now we have the Foundry coming, which is a way for we really like to refer to it as player-authored missions. This isn't a modding tool.
Using the Foundry, you won't be able to create new like skins, new costumes, new ships, nothing like that?
Not in the sense that you'll be able to create new assets. It's not like The Sims where players have just created tons and tons of items. Okay. What we are allowing is you can edit existing items. And so, for example, if you want to make an NPC that has basically we just open up the costume creator to you and take off some of the training wheels on it and say, go ahead, create what this person should look like.
Okay.
And you can use different costume options, and you'll be allowed to make some aliens and use them in your missions. And then on top of that, you'll be able to place existing enemy groups that we've created for you. So, for example, if you want to have Romulans or Hirogen in your missions, you'll be able to use ones that we've created. But we've also gone back and we've added some things like, some bosses and some different costumes that you can use. So it won't be just all vanilla. We're really trying to get in some uniqueness there so that people can use these items.
Now, is there plans for down the road? And I would assume maybe you can't say anything, but is there plans to also tie in the Foundry with items from the C-Store? Is that like a possible? Is there any talks? What's going to happen there?
Yeah, I think someone might have brought up just, C-Store. How does the C-Store interact with the Foundry? I don't have a ton of details on it. There's no intention for us right at this moment to be even talking about that because we're really just trying to get the tools working. I do know that, for example, most of the costumes, even if they do, like for example, if you're making an NPC, if there are costumes that would be microtransaction costumes, I still think you can use those on your NPCs. You don't have to necessarily.
That was essentially the genesis of my question. Yeah.
If you want to make bad guys that are wearing the mercenary outfit, can you?
Or a suit.
Right,
yes.
In a suit. The intention is that yes, you will be able to do that. You don't have to have that unlocked. Those costumes are really just for personal account use. The C-Store items, I don't really see how that would work with the Foundry.
You touched on earlier saying that you had actually created the Defera weeklies that we recently went through, all using the internal Foundry tools. Does that include the minigame mechanics that were incorporated into a couple of those maps?
No. So the patrols were using the old Genesis system, so it was the early version of the Foundry. But it's essentially the same thing in terms of the scope of what it can do.
So I'm wondering if you're planning to incorporate, at least in the initial version of the Foundry, whether or not we can implement things like, when you step on a certain plate, it has an effect on the environment. Doing like environment-based mini games, like the puzzle on the ruins.
Yeah.
On Defera,
so
like that.
So for some of that stuff, those were actual episodes. Those weren't done in the patrols. So what we are going to do is you have things such as contents and objects that you can use. So, for example, if you want to talk to someone, you would place down a contact or a dialogue, and then you basically decide who you're talking to and where they're standing and what, if they are standing there or if they're remote. And you determine, what they're going to say, what costume they use. And if you want to interact with something, you pick an object and you place it in the room, and you say, okay, well, how do you want to interact with this? Is this a door? Is this something that you need to pick up? Is this something that you click on? What happens when you use this object? And a lot of that is tied into mission. And so, for example, it may be the door is locked. You need to go put in the code over here. And so you go, and part of the design of the tool is that you can use these, interact with objects as a way to make a similar type of puzzle content. Now, I don't know if that means exactly being able to do the sort of pressure plate things that you've seen in some of our featured episodes, but that's, the basics are there. So I'm really curious to see what people can do with it.
Any indication when we might see the first release of this on Tribble?
The first release of this on Tribble will most likely be in November. That's our goal right now. We're also looking at doing some internal play testing, maybe bring some people in to test the tool that have an interest with. Like, for example, we're opening it up to some people internally, kind of like a friends and family beta of the tool. And then November is really the idea where we'd like to get that, as well as a lot of other things in Season 3, onto Tribble to start getting some testing on it. So I would say the first couple weeks of November, with the targeted sort of first week of December release for Season 3.
Cool. Nice. Now, one last question for the Foundry. Is it going to be possible at all using this? I realize it's a mission creator, but is there any way possible to hook this into persistent areas so that we might be able to create things like fleet bases and stuff like that?
Oh, that's exactly. That'd be awesome.
That is an absolute goal of the system. And so, for example, the two things that you can do with this is you can either make your own interiors or you can make your own space maps. And so, for example, if you want to make your own base interior, you can use the kits that are there, set up your room, set up all your hallways, put your props down, place your sort of NPCs in the area. And you can certainly make that an area that you can save off and say, here's my social area. And upload that. It doesn't necessarily have to have any other mission than, hey, please come visit my place, right? And then you can put it up there, and you can share that. We call them projects, right? So every user will have the ability to I believe right now it's set at 2 projects open at any given time that aren't published. And once you publish a project, I think that opens up the ability to maybe make a new project. That's all sort of TBD right now. Okay. But so you make a project, and let's say you publish that project, you can then share that with your friends and say, hey, here's the sort of quote unquote link to my project, or here's how you search it. And then players can then look that up and then go grab the mission to come visit your area.
And it would be capable of supporting multiple players on the same map that they would go and visit with each other?
It isn't necessarily a static map at this time. It's a mission map, so you'd have to be on a team to do it. But that's one of the things where having static areas also opens up. So, for example, let's take Andoria as an example. Let's say we take that planet, and there's already some NPCs there. There's a planet surface. We can go through and we can tag locations and people and objects. And for example, you can make a mission that says, hey, I want you to go talk to Shran on Andoria. And so when you take that player mission, like anyone that's currently on Andoria and they go up and talk to Shran, he's not going to say anything to them. However, if someone has taken your UGC mission or your player-authored mission and they go to Andoria, then Shran will talk to them and have something for them to do.
That's great.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of those areas where we are absolutely opening up certain parts of the game so that you can use them in your missions, but they have to already exist there. For example, you can't publish a mission that puts something on Earth Space Dock. You can use the things that are already there and the people that are already there in your mission.
You could potentially have Admiral Quinn at Space Dock give somebody a new step in a player-authored mission.
Certainly, you can say, hey, go talk to Admiral Quinn. There may be some NPCs that we just mark as off limits to cut down on some confusion.
Sure.
But for example, yeah, that's a great example where you could say, hey, I want you to go talk to so you go find Sulu on Earth Space Dock, and you could have a mission where you need to go talk to him. And he could just be a step in your mission, and then you could put a dialogue on him that says, "Oh, well, I have a new mission for you. I need you to actually travel over to Vulcan and deliver this item or find this person for me."
That's great. That really ties it into the existing universe in a really real way. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for people that aren't playing this player-authored content, they don't really notice anything different because nothing is really being added or removed from the game. But for the people that are experiencing and are taking these missions, they're getting sort of an expanded view of the universe because they can start to see that people have gone and hooked up dialogue and quests to people that are in the game.
I got dibs at the bartender at Earth Space Dock.
All right. I got Woody at DS9. All right. Now, I just have a miscellaneous question for you, Daniel, before we jump in. And then we just only got a couple more questions left, and these ones were submitted by the audience. But first up, I just wanted to ask you, in a recent interview, you mentioned something about fleet progression tools. Is there anything you can expand on there?
So fleet progression is something, it's funny, you go back and you just mentioned star bases. One of the things that we're looking at to do in one of the upcoming seasons, either season 4, 5, or 6, is to really use the Foundry tools as a way to progress fleets and allow fleets to not only make their own star bases using this tool, but then also serve as a hub for your fleet. Cool. And so we kind of look at it as, adding more gameplay and more options. We'd certainly love for people to have to, design their base and actually have an exterior for it and put it somewhere in the world.
Yep.
And then actually use that as a way for people to not only author their own missions for the fleet or have fleet-sponsored events, but really use it as part of the game and give fleets a purpose and something to do as part of this gameplay.
That's great.
So that's all stuff that we're really excited about and we really want to do, and we're working directly with the Foundry team to make sure that we'll be able to do that sort of thing in the future.
Now, I wanted to ask you one more miscellaneous question. I just remembered it before we jump in, and then we've just got a couple of listener-submitted ones. We've heard a couple of things from you and a couple other people, sort of mixed messages regarding special task forces. It sounded like maybe for a little while it was considered to cease development on special task forces and more integrate that content into future weekly episodes. But then it sounded like maybe there might be some revival of the special task forces. What's the current intention and plans with STFs in the game?
So the special task forces aren't going away. Right now, my big angst with the special task forces is that for the 5-player teams that they were designed to be played with, it's very difficult for 5 players to get grouped up to do those episodes, and then some of them just are very difficult and challenging for players to get through, and something that I think we need to go back and address. And then on top of that, I think that there's also some of the best environment work that we've done in the game, and there's definitely some cool tricks that went into those episodes. And not everyone's really, because they're at such a high level, not everyone's got to experience those locales and that conflict with the Borg. So I think it would also be fun, and what I personally see is special task forces, as they are, staying the same, only getting better, and getting these loot sets added to them so that they stay, there's a fun reason to do it, and there's you're getting a good reward out of it, and making sure that they work properly, and that's one of the things that I hope Gozer can go back and really touch those up. But then also taking those same environments and making either a version of them or a similar mission that takes place in those same locations that can be played solo. So, for example, if you want to go back and experience some of these environments that you saw, like in the Infected or in Terradome, that there could be similar missions that take place on there, maybe not as in depth or involved with boss battles as the STFs, but that are what I would consider difficult, sort of really cool episodes that can take place in these same environments. Now, whether you call that a single-person STF or not, I don't necessarily know what to call it, but that's sort of the idea there. Because a lot of people want to go experience that content, but it's just not that easy.
There's a barrier for entry there.
Is it fair to say, though, that that intended work is on hold right now while Season 3 and the Foundry are being worked on? Or is that actually going to be worked on sooner than later?
Well, we certainly work on all of this sort of simultaneously. For example, the rewards are being worked on right now for the STFs. So that new Borg loot that you saw that has the little bits and pieces that go onto your ships, that work is ongoing right now as part of Season 3. One of the nice things about getting Dan back is so that he can go back and start working on those soon. So right now he's he's off in Klingon space getting some Klingon content added to the game. And then I'm very hopeful that after that we'll be able to go back and start looking at those STFs. Okay. There's also some STFs that we're in a state of sort of we'd started work on them that can also make an appearance in the future.
Into the Hive.
Yeah, into the Hive being one of them. Yeah. There was also an interesting tie-in with augments and maybe the Children of Khan that we had talked about as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we won't keep you too much longer, but why don't you let us throw a couple of viewer questions in your face here?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
All right, the first one comes to you from a player by the name of Gabby. Says, when can we have the rest of the solar system? He goes on to explain, and I'm paraphrasing this part, but the last time we heard about it, it was implied that the art was complete and the maps were being held back so that we could get missions or content added to them. But he also goes on to point out that ship interiors have already been added and there's nothing to do in there. So
you just want Jupiter Station.
Well, Gabby wants it, not me.
Oh, right.
I didn't pick the... Oh, I did pick the question.
Anywhere. So Mars, Venus, Jupiter, all those planets, they're all in our internal map editor. One of the things that I just don't like about it is the fact that you have to map transfer to each planet.
Right.
I think it's kind of silly. And what I've been sort of holding out for is I really just kind of want to redo that whole solar system, including Earth space dock. So you've seen me sort of talk about wanting to have the Klingons come and blow up the old, the new Earth space dock, so we can put the old one back in there.
Let me ask you real quick though: if they blow up Earth space dock and you revamp Earth, is it also going to get rid of all the silly purple clouds that circle the whole sector?
There's all kinds of weird stuff going on in there. So I think part of that is
demo record. You'll see some of that. It's pretty interesting.
I'd love to be able to take that whole system and just make it sort of a fun place where you don't necessarily have to map move. You can just sort of fly around the solar system. Yeah. And so that would require a little bit bigger, a little bit more rework. But that's sort of what I'm holding out for. That's why I haven't just put them out there, because it's very difficult to put maps out there and then take them back. Okay. You sort of have to, once you put them out there, it's very difficult to change them that drastically. So that's what I'm holding out for. But they'll be there.
All right. Well, the next question comes from Sin Master J-Man. What's he say?
He says, if you got a visit from future you 3 years from now, what would you like them to tell you about STO?
Ooh. You have anything?
I think the future me 3 years from now would be talking about that V'ger STF was amazing.
Nice. Okay. All right.
No, it's funny.
Pinnacle of your career, David.
We look at we look at the game industry and we look at MMOs in general, and Star Trek Online is one of these little engines that's continuing to move along, and we have a great team that is continuing to build content and features for the game. So I'm fully expecting that within 3 years, we'll be able to do so much in the game and add all those little things that we all sort of have on our personal wish lists. That's really what I see out of the team, is everyone has these strong desires about things that they want to add to the game, whether it be a new species or new locations or new types of mini games or features. And given that time, we'll be able to put all of that stuff in the game, as well as listen to the continued efforts of our player base, who honestly give us amazing, great ideas. There's just tons of threads that we use and reference all the time internally.
Yeah, that was one of the primary reasons we started our community feedback section, was to give people another chance to voice their opinions and everything.
And the last viewer question comes in from Murphy, and he's touched on something that I've kind of noticed and really haven't really verbalized much. But Daniel, you seem to have kind of a strong commitment to the Klingons, and Murphy chimed in and said, "Can you point out any specific features of the KDF that you think need to be improved or finalized before we can start what's it say? I can't
to expect work on a new faction.
Oh, right. So what is the landmarker that you see? And I know that you seem committed to the Klingons.
A few primary features.
Yeah. What point do we hit before you start looking at maybe another faction?
So what I look at, my sort of benchmark that I set in my mind in terms of, when can I, in good conscience, start working on the Romulans? I look at the fact that the KDF and pretty much any future faction moving forward needs to have a solid leveling experience, and not necessarily all of it being PvE, but right now, to level a Klingon to max level isn't the most fun thing in the world.
Right.
And so what I look at is you have to have a solid starting experience to really define who this faction is, what they're about, why they're different than the Federation, have their own sort of home base. So when I look at the fact that I really want Kronos to be a little bit better than it is, I want to see a better sort of, I don't know if it means putting a tutorial in so you can start a Klingon from day one or not, but definitely having more of an introduction that sort of takes you through the first several levels of the Klingons to give you, instead of just sending you out to go fight stuff, give you a story and give you a reason why you're a Klingon. And how you sort of fit into the rest of the game. And then, looking specifically at PvP, making sure that there are really fun Klingon-focused PvP scenarios and PvP maps. I think a lot of the times when we look at PvP, it's not really slanted towards one side or the other. It's kind of this interesting, like, well, let's make a PvP map, and okay, well, let's put it over here because this thing looks cool. I'd rather see things that are much more faction storyline specific or basic. Like, I'd love to see Klingons have some sort of PvP scenario where they're raiding. Starbase 24 would have been a perfect example. I think that should have been from the very beginning, sort of a PvP scenario where the Klingons attack Starbase 24.
Can you foresee that possibly being adapted into having a PvP version?
Absolutely. In fact, as a little secret tip, we've been working on some open PvP tech internally that I haven't really been talking about. But Gozer and I and Scott got it working the other day, and we're really kind of happy with it, just in terms of the fact that it opens up our flexibility in what we can do in those sort of maps. So I would love to see that kind of thing where you can go in and have a PvP map that sort of fits your faction's ideas of what they should be doing, right? Whether it's attacking a starbase or, doing something clandestine, or maybe fighting against another house. Those are all sort of things that I think is part of the benchmark to get the Klingons where they need to go. I'm making sure that the content is good and playable, right? Like,
of course,
I don't think anyone wants to go into any more expanses and do those kind of missions. Like, let's make that better. Let's just make that experience better.
And so there's no firm line marker that you have on a whiteboard or on a chart. It's just once we feel confident in these areas, that's when it's time to look at another faction. Has there been any discussion of maybe which direction you might go one day?
With the new faction?
With a new faction, because I know that's what everybody wants to know. Is there an inclination it's gonna be Romulans, or technically we think we have the best ability to make these the next player, so that's probably the way we'll go. That kind of stuff.
It's, looking at the poll and what we have internally, I think the next faction would be Romulan, or at least the and it would be TBD what that includes. Does that include Hirogen? Does that include Riemann? Okay. I think probably. But the idea is that, when we look at the, let's use that as an example. I would certainly want them to have a starting story that sort of defines who they are, who the main contacts of that faction are, what their sort of goal and purpose is in the game, and sort of what you're trying to do in opposition to the other factions. And that's something that we sort of tell in the storyline. The Federation have this sort of plot with the Undine and the Borg, but we need to have sort of these other subplots for these other factions. So I think that's a jumping point and where you sort of start from.
All right. Well, that's everything we have on the list. Is there anything you want to touch on before we hang up on you?
No, I think you guys are,
all right, click.
Those are all great. I was going to say those are just some really great questions. I'm most excited about the Foundry, and our player-authored missions coming down the road. As we go into testing these tools, I just want to call out, they are, we're probably even going to put the beta moniker on them because, these are brand spanking new tools in terms of the UI and functionality. And right now we're just focused on stability and making sure the tools do what we ask them to do.
Actually, speaking of that, I do have one more quick question here. You mentioned that there might be some sort of friends and family internal beta for the UGC, or sorry, player-authored missions going on soon. If viewers of our show are interested in getting on board with that, is there anybody point of contact on the forums?
It's going to be invite only, it sounds like.
Yeah,
I think Stormshade's a good start. He's probably going to hate me for saying his name, but I think that will definitely. I think there will be a forum that's going to be started up soon that'll be focused on these tools, and I'm sure if there is some sort of application process that they want to start up. I mean, for the most part, we've just been letting anybody and everybody onto Tribble. So within several weeks, I would imagine anyone who wants to use the tools will be able to jump in and start using them. But to focus feedback and sort of directions, we are going to be creating its own subforum that's focused just on authored content, so that we can talk about not only the types of missions that are being created, but the tools themselves, and how to make them better, and
give people tips on how to use them.
Tips and tricks. I think we're even going to be filming some videos of how we use the tools and giving some example missions. So those are things that are all coming down the road, and
I could see a subforum becoming a valuable spot for people to discuss some of the missions they've played or something. I don't know if that'll happen in there, but that's going to probably be something the community will look for.
And one thing I do, there were some interesting threads on the forum today about this, but there's concern about, don't get your chocolate in my peanut butter. I don't
delicious, though. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't do that.
There's a concern over, how are you going to keep player authored missions out? What if I am worried that I'm going to run into some weird slash fic that is going to taint my mind or portray Star Trek
canon, just destroy
canon. Yeah. And my response to that is that we're doing a lot of work to create a workflow that allows these missions to go through a vetting process before they get into any sort of mission list, and then on top of that, making it very clear that this episode. This is what it's called. Here's who made it. Here's a summary of it. Here's the comments and ratings on this episode. This is definitely player-authored content. Here's all the contributors to it. So having that sort of information at your fingertips before you make the decision of whether or not you want to take that mission is part of the feature.
Cool.
Great.
That sounds good. Well, Daniel, I think that's probably everything we can think to drag out of you today.
Yeah, I think
so.
Awesome!
All right, well, thanks for joining us, and hopefully...
Happy Columbus Day, everybody, even though it's probably a day or two after the show.
Yeah, I think it's day after, but... No, or day before?
I don't know.
I think it's the day before. Anyways, well, happy Columbus Day, everyone. Just because we won't remember to say it.
Canadian Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Whoa,
yeah, right. Canadian Thanksgiving.
Oh, that turkey sounds good. All right, Daniel. Well, thanks for joining us on the show, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, gentlemen.
All right. We're recording. Here we go.
Oh, right.
Here we go in 3, 2. Is this 54, by the way?
It is. That's what I wrote here.
Hey.
The last one was 53. So.
Yeah. I think that's what comes next.
Yeah. You know what? Another thing I like about not getting video?
What?
I don't have to fix the lip sync in post.
That's true.
Hey, see, it's all kinds of good.
Oh.